Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to kick off with a fireside chat between David from Wired and Jack Dorsey, and they both look wonderfully sprightly this morning. Thanks very much.
Good morning. Come grab a couple of seats left. So I'm David Rowan from Wired, but you're not here to hear me. You're here to hear Jack, the entrepreneur of entrepreneurs. And I'm going to go straight in. We'll take some questions afterwards, but I want to start with women's rights as well. So there was a rather attractive woman at the door at Lily's nightclub last night who tweeted at about 3 o'clock, "Oh my God, Jack Dorsey just walked in, I'm melting." You didn't tweet how that ended.
No, I did not.
We're going to get longer responses to the serious questions. So Jack, you're not just starting up one business, you're pretty hands-on on two businesses, two startups. A lot of these guys are just founding one business. What are these guys doing wrong?
They're doing everything right, actually. Focusing on one thing and getting it out and building a management team around it to run the service and to continue to innovate and push should be the focus. I give 100% of my attention to Square and 10% to Twitter.
So how does it work day by day? Do you have like an hour in the morning you do a bit of Twitter work?
No, it really depends on the day. It's very, we have a lot of conversations. I talk mainly to the engineers and to the product folks at Twitter because those are my strengths. And it really depends on what the big question is today or what's come up during the night. But it really varies by day. Most of my focus, though, is on building Square, which has a number of complexities that I'm not really familiar with and still learning how to deal with, specifically around the banking industry, building hardware, fulfilling hardware, processing returns, dealing with risk and fraud, all of these things that I've never had to deal with for Twitter, but is fairly standard in the financial world.
So were you restless a couple of years ago at Twitter and thought, I've got a spare hour, I'm going to start something else? How did the idea for Square evolve? Well,
my co-founder was my first boss. He was my boss when I was 15 years old in St. Louis, Missouri. And he was talking to me one day, and he came to me and said, I really want to build an electric car. I said, okay, you want to start a company for an electric car? He's like, yeah, I want to start a company, build electric cars. And I want your help. Like, interesting idea. That's something I know nothing about, so maybe we should explore that. But what was happening in the economy was very interesting because the economy was crashing completely. All of the abstractions that we built up in the economy, abstraction upon abstraction upon abstraction, had suddenly been erased and was coming down very, very quickly. The management teams of the banks and the financial institutions were being moved out, and new management teams were being brought in, and they were looking for more innovation. And there's no better time to innovate and to start a new company, a new project, than a depression or a recession. It's often a time of extreme creativity and a very easy way to get into something new. So he's a glass artist. He sells $2,000 pieces of glass art. And he one day was unable to take a payment for something he wanted to sell. He couldn't accept a credit card. 90% of the United States is using plastic cards to pay for things. No one's carrying cash anymore. But it's really difficult to accept credit cards. So we were trying to figure out why that was. And we took a month, and Square is the answer.
So I don't know if any of you have seen these little devices that plug into your phones and turn them into a card reader, so you can transfer. And I think the slogan is $0 to $60 in under 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And the model is you're charging the retailer credit card type fees, 2.75%.
Well, the terrible thing about the credit card industry is that it's based around ignorance. There's this thing called the interchange, and the merchant is actually paying depending on the card that the payer uses. So if I go and buy a $3 espresso at a shop in the United States and I lay down a Amex, the merchant might be paying 2.79%. If I lay down a black MasterCard with rewards on it, they might be paying 4% to receive that payment. So it varies from 1.79 to 4%, and they don't find out until 30 days after when they get their merchant statement, and the banks come in and take money from their account. So it's a terrible, terrible system, and it's extremely complex to approach, and it's why it's turned off a lot of people from processing with credit cards. So we're just charging one rate, which is 2.75%, 15 cents on every transaction. We pay the card companies out of that. Everything that goes into your bank account that night is yours. So you know that you can use that to build your inventory or market or promote, with that money.
So this launched last week in the US, and I've seen you quoted as saying by next June there'll be $1 billion in transactions.
Yes, we're moving very, very fast. So we've been in a pilot program for about seven months. We sent out 50,000 of those readers all over the United States. We're starting with the United States, figuring out the regulation there, and then expanding out to the rest of the world. The issue is we have to go through all this banking regulation that has to be tailored to every individual country. So we're taking it a little bit slower than your typical internet startup, but it is still moving significantly faster than we're moving with Twitter in terms of both adoption and building the company out.
So is your vision kill the banking industry?
No. The vision is really around the information around the transaction. So I believe that payments is inherently social. It's something that we all go through every single day. It's something that often feels like a burden. It feels like something you have to get through. It doesn't feel magical. It's never been designed. It's never had a product aesthetic given to it. So what if we treated payments as a form of communication, as a social interaction? And really the end point of most payments is a receipt. And a receipt, if you think about it, today we get receipts and they're kind of useless. You throw them away, or you save them for your expense department, or you save them for whatever reason, but you can't really act on them at all. You can't do anything with them, but there's such amazing real estate. So what if we treated the receipt as a publishing medium? We treat it as a communication channel between the payer and the merchant, the seller. So, with Square, people are putting in their Facebook accounts. They're putting in their Twitter accounts. So I can actually buy a cappuccino, and then I can follow the cafe to figure out what they're roasting next week. I can see exactly where the transaction took place. I can see how many times I've been to the location. So I have 20 coffee cards on my refrigerator. They all have 2 or 3 cappuccino stamps on them. I'm never getting my free cappuccino. But since we know since you've used the same card and you've used the same address to deliver your receipt via SMS or email, we can alert the merchant to say that this is this person's 10th time. You want to edit the transaction to give them something for free. And that feels so much better than going in with a card or cards and expecting something. Just someone saying, you're a good customer, this is on the house. So giving more power, enabling more of those magic moments for merchants, and also giving them that around data. If you go to any coffee store in America today and you ask how many cappuccinos did you sell today, they'll have no idea. You can answer that question with a $10,000 POS system, maybe, if you can figure out how to work the $10,000 POS system. But there's no equivalent to Google Analytics, to this rich data that we all use in this room to determine where our businesses go and where our products go for small businesses, for medium-sized businesses around the world. They don't have any of this decisive power, so they're kind of flying in the dark.
So if transactions are going social, how far are purchasing intentions going to be a factor of your social graph? Mark Zuckerberg said a few weeks ago that he sees social commerce as one of the most exciting trends in the year ahead. Is that, as you see it, an extension of, Amazon recommends, but your peer group recommends that you buy this?
I don't know. It's a sensitive subject. The controls that you have to put in place to allow one to share that sort of activity have to be very, very fine-grained, and I think they have to be tied to the transaction. I think it has to be a choice within the transaction. I do potentially want to broadcast that I just donated to charity water. I may not want to broadcast that I donated, what amount I donated to. I may not want to broadcast, just a typical cappuccino purpose. So having the choice to do that within the transaction or even post-transaction, I think is potentially useful. But you have to be very, very careful. You have to be very sensitive to a lot of the privacy concerns that people have, because money and moving money around and people's money and their spending habits are very, very personal. It's very personal information and not something that we're actually used to exposing in mass, and especially to a worldwide audience, given the social media tools we have today.
And how much of a risk do you see Facebook itself with its own credits system?
I think there's a lot of room in payments. 6% of commerce has moved online. The rest of it is all offline. Square right now is focused entirely on offline transactions, face-to-face transactions, and really addressing those needs first. And the insight that our company has is that we don't want to change a behavior. When people see a rectangular card with a magnetic strip on the back or a chip on the front, they know and they expect exactly what that does. There's no question in their mind how to use that. Most people, at least in the US, know exactly what that means. So if we just turn on that other side of the equation and we leverage that behavior, it becomes very, very simple. We don't have to train anyone to use a new system or to question how to make those payments over a new network. That can come later, after everyone's in.
And just very briefly, how big is the potential for Square, do you see?
I think it's quite huge. Right? We're going for it. I'm only interested in building really large, impactful companies, and I think payments is an area which has been ignored for many, many years, and really never been given the attention it deserves, given that it's so prevalent in our society. So I think it definitely has the ability to match Twitter's growth and maybe even surpass it.
Okay. Now, there's a lot of entrepreneurs here who want to learn from you the hands-on trial and error thing. So you've had a couple of glitches. We learned that it doesn't work in the new iPhone 4. We've learned that you had to delay your rollout for a few months. I think you said the ideas were not fully baked when you first released them. How hard has it been?
Well, it's been a huge learning experience, and what I meant by not fully baked was I think it's really important to have a good sense of pacing for these companies, and it's really, really hard to do, especially for the amount of stuff we're doing. So we released some aspects of Square, which our excitement kind of got the better of us. When we announced the company, it was focused around credit card processing. And then we realized that there's a lot to the receipt. We shouldn't limit people to just accepting cards. They should be able to accept any form of payment that comes in the door, including cash. So we built a POS app for the iPad, for the tablet, point of sale system, and sent it out. And everyone immediately thought, where's the credit card swiping? I thought I could accept credit cards with Square. Well, we're not finished there yet, because we still have a bunch of complications we have to work through with the banks and the hardware. And by the way, Apple just released a device that has this metal antenna around it, so it interferes with our device. So we had to, and the hardware lead time is immensely complex, because you have to wait 6 weeks to make any small change. And for any software developer, that's just ridiculous. We can make them in a matter of 6 minutes usually. So we released a bunch of stuff and kind of set the expectation the wrong way. So I think the biggest lesson there was having a greater sense of pacing, having a greater sense of unfolding, and communicating exactly what we intended to do with the product rollout. We didn't do the best job there. So now it's okay, because as soon as people start receiving the product and start using it, they tend to forget everything in the past. But for a few months, it was quite difficult, as people just the only thing we saw on Facebook and Twitter was like, "Where's my Square? It's been 3 months." Like, what is this company? It's a complete sham and fraud.
It did okay for Cabbage Patch Dolls. The scarcity at the beginning made everybody
Right.
excited. When is Square coming to Europe?
That's a good question. We're focused on the U.S. right now. We've gotten through a lot of the banking relationships and the regulations. And as I said earlier, we have to get through those regulations in every single country that we want to participate in. So I believe the next country that we'll address will be Canada, and then Europe. And hopefully we can take the entire European Union as one entity. But we have to see. We have to put people on the ground. We have to talk with the government here. We have to talk with the banks. We have to have a relationship with the banks. And we have to make sure that everything is being managed according to local regulation.
Yeah, we don't like banks much in Europe. Did making
No comment.
success out of your earlier businesses, did having a huge chunk of potential money and money in the bank make you more likely to take on a big risk like this, a big project?
Did it make me personally more?
I just think, did you feel you could afford to do something ballsier, having succeeded beforehand?
Not necessarily. I never thought about it that way. This was the financial industry and the healthcare industry are two industries I've been pretty fascinated by recently, just because of all the damage and complexity within both of them. Healthcare, because there's nothing more precious to us as humans than our health, but to many of us it's a black box, and one that's very little understood, one we don't have access to data to, and we fairly powerless, and there's not a lot of focus on the preventative health. But I think it's going to take another 2 years, at least in the United States, for the public conversation to die down a bit and settle before we can really start innovating. But the financial market was something that was in dire need of simplification and just an opportune time. So going to the financial world, coming from background of social media, was a little bit difficult because we met with the financial institutions, and the first thing they said to me was, "Why do you think you have any idea how to operate within this world? You pass 140 characters of people eating breakfast to someone else. That's all you know. What do you have to bring to the table here?" So the only answer to that was, "Give me your credit card so I can swipe it." And once they saw that working product, it just felt magical, and that kind of takes over everything. So it was never really a question of, can I do this? It was just something I really wanted to see in the world, and kept pushing and pushing and pushing.
Now, there have been some senior changes at Twitter. I mean, is your role going to change now?
My role stays the same. I'm still chairman. I still participate in the same way. It's great that we have all the founders' attention entirely on the product now. So we have much better conversations, and we have to move a lot faster in the next year than we have in the past 4 years. And specifically around how to sustain the company. Revenue is not just about making money, it's really about sustaining the product and sustaining the growth of the network. And we have a lot of focus that we need to put there. But also, it needs to be cohesive of the product and where the product is moving. It has to emerge entirely from the product. We don't want to put a system or monetization strategy on top of the network because it's just something that's not going to enable more usage, and it's going to feel awkward. People will be turned away.
So why did Evan Williams move aside as CEO to product?
Well, we're in a new phase, like I said, where we have to move much faster and focus on really sustaining the company. And Dick Costello, who was our COO, had been operating a lot of the promoted products and a lot of the monetization thought, but is a very, very decisive leader and very cohesive. And he's fully apt and able to take the company into this new phase of really, really focused execution. Whereas Ev is just an amazing UI and product person and really needs to focus a lot more of his energy on that. You know, after the launch of new Twitter, which opened up a whole new canvas of potential space for, you know, new information and a new way to surface related content, we have a lot of work to do there. I think Twitter has scratched only 1% of its potential today.
Wow.
So there's a lot we haven't really done. We haven't launched a lot of products over the past 4 years. It's just mainly been a lot of UI changes and evolutions, apart from the promoted products, of course. So I'm going to get back into launching products on top of this utility and really driving it.
So I read that last year you were officially in profit, largely because you did deals with Google and with Microsoft. What is the route to profit?
The route to profit. I think it's, you know, I think it emerges from the network. We have 3 monetization products right now, apart from the search deals, which are the promoted trends, the tweets, and the accounts. They're no longer experiments; they're working, but we need to use them in a way that builds more relevancy to the user and surfaces valuable information right away for both sides, not for the promoter and for the brand, but also for the user, so that the information coming to them feels natural and something that they were already looking to discover. So it's really, again, focused on the product and where that emerges.
So there's been some reaction to the new Twitter online, reading tweets. It's not entirely gone down fantastically. I mean, how have you responded to that mixed feedback?
I think it's actually gone pretty well. Like traditionally we're in a situation where if we change a link color, people go up in arms. But this one, this rollout we did very, very well, and I don't think we've had a lot of people switch back to the old Twitter. One problem I think we've had is people clicking on the tweets and recognizing that there is a whole nother pane of information. But it is something that's much cleaner, and when you discover that you can click on these things and that you see, you know, all of the expanded information and related information, related accounts, it's a whole new world, and that's kind of a magic discovery point that every product should really focus to build in.
Now, we're in an interactive era where it's not just the guy on the platform who asks questions. Who here would like to ask Mr. Jack Dorsey a question? Please raise your hand, and there is a microphone coming round. Well, they're too tired after the night before.
In the recent financial reform bill, they nixed the ability for Visa, MasterCard, Amex to require that merchants not charge a different rate for credit card and for non-credit card. You see that, the effect of that in Europe for a long time, where you pay extra to use a credit card. What impact do you think this has on, you know, the potential for new payment providers or for where you guys fit in?
Oh, I think it's huge. It gives the consumer a lot more choice. It gives the merchants a lot more choice. So the reason you see a lot of those under $10 no cash, which has been in the past against Visa and MasterCard regulation, is because of just the amazing price and cost of taking these cards. So I think it's a huge opening that is going to be fought a lot from the associations. No matter the legislation, there's going to be a lot of contention, and it is going to come down into the products that we're building. Square right now doesn't know how to react to it, but we need to build it within our product as well. But anything that allows us to be more agnostic to payment device, we think is great. So that we're building our platform so that we can accept any form of payment that the payer has in their pocket. So we hope to see a lot more innovation there and a lot more payment devices come as a result of this.
So apart from the financial industry, what other sectors do you see as ripe for disrupting next? What's the next game changer that Jack Dorsey's going to be plowing into? Or at least people here might think about plowing into.
I'm mostly fascinated by healthcare and just specifically a lot of the data around healthcare. Having ownership over your personal health data, which you can use to annotate, where you are in your life, but also use it as a way to better your life and focus more on preventative actions than reactionary, I think is hugely disruptive and hugely important. And it's the interesting thing, though, is that in the healthcare industry in the United States, a lot of the failures of the healthcare industry is paying doctors and paying nurses. So Square actually has a lot of doctors and house call nurses and doctors who are going around and just taking payments immediately from their patients, which is huge because it brings back that that face-to-face interaction of the health practitioner with their patients. We have people sitting in airports giving flu shots and then swiping cards for the flu shot. So this sort of idea just opens up a whole new way of thinking about how to run these traditional businesses, and could be that one needle that just upsets the entire industry in a good way.
Great. Well, my Fitbit's telling me I've walked 2,545 paces today.
Those
If you
are amazing.
incorporate that in my Square,
Well, see, the interesting thing about that device, we'll think about that. The interesting thing about the Fitbit, which I've been trying to understand, is that everyone in San Francisco, all the early adopters, have those devices.
little thing you clip to your clothes.
It's a pedometer. Very, very simple, but it provides amazing graphs and data on the web. And it does it in a very beautiful, elegant way. So everyone in San Francisco and all of these early tech adopters are fascinated by this thing. But how do we get that in the pockets of people in middle America, where I'm from? I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. The obesity rate is pretty high. Not a lot of people move around. So how does one get inspired to clip that to them? We haven't figured out that sort of messaging or that marketing, because this is a potential key for that preventative health and for an understanding of what your actions or inactions do to your health. And I'm excited that Apple has built in, for the last 3 years, pedometers into their iPods, but no one really turns on that function. And why? Like, what is the selling point for this device for the rest of the world, not just for the tech early adopters? That's what we need to figure out.
It's a visualization of your own personal data that makes it usable. So is there a last question from the audience? Is there a microphone for this gentleman?
How you doing? Jack, I just thought you're saying you're still formulating your ideas around Square. And I suppose here we're involved with an online charity platform that allows you to gather your unused loyalty points. The platform's called mygoodpoints.org. Allows you to gather your unused loyalty points. So I was just thinking those vouchers you had on the fridge, using Square, rather than going for a 10th free coffee, you could be gathering those points.
What's the question?
And the question being, would you think this is a concept that you could be using, in terms of disrupting the industry, using Square to not only purchase your coffees and look at how often you've been to that store, but also to influence the likes of Starbucks to be empowering you, the donor, to give to your healthcare projects or to water projects or charities that you're passionate about?
Absolutely. So we're very, very focused on using on the ability to use Square as a social good and building that in and baking it into the platform itself. So we've had a lot of charities, a lot of causes use Square to take donations because, again, no one's carrying enough cash to make a donation on the spot. But having some very simple things that people can use to convert to something, to a cause of their choice, is huge. But we need to make it really easy. We need to make it feel good, and we are dedicated to doing that. It's very, very important that we speak to causes and charities.
I fear our time is up, so I'm just going to ask the important question, Jack, finally. When they make the movie, The Short Message Network, who's going to play Jack Dorsey?
I have no idea. I hope you do.
DiCaprio. Thank you very much.